In the heart of London, behind the heavy oak doors of institutions that have stood for centuries, lies a secret. It's a secret not written in your history books, not taught in your universities, and certainly not discussed on the evening news. We are told that kings and queens rule nations. We are told that presidents and prime ministers lead the free world. But what if I told you that for over 200 years, the strings of global power have been pulled by a single name? A name that whispered in the ears of Napoleon, funded the Industrial Revolution, and survived the fall of empires that once claimed to be eternal. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the documented, cold-blooded reality of the richest family to ever walk this earth. A family that mastered the art of staying in the shadows while their gold built the modern world. They are the architects of the central banking system, the silent partners in every major war, and the owners of a fortune so vast, it makes modern billionaires look like mere street vendors. But as we peel back the layers of this golden empire, one question remains, buried beneath centuries of carefully crafted silence. If they truly own the world, then why have they spent the last 50 years trying to convince us that they no longer exist? Stay with me until the very end, because the answer to that question will change the way you look at every dollar in your pocket and every headline on your screen. This is the Empire of Shadow, the true story of the Rothschilds. To understand the shadow, we must go back to the light, or rather, the lack of it. Frankfurt, Germany, 1744. In a cramped, narrow street known as the Judengasse, or the Jews' Alley, a boy named Meer Amshell Rothschild was born. At that time, the Jewish people were confined to ghettos, forbidden from owning land, forbidden from entering certain professions, and forced to wear yellow badges. They were outsiders in their own land. But Meer Amshell had something more valuable than land. He had an obsession with coins. Not just any coins, ancient, rare, and historical ones. He began as a small-time trader, but he wasn't just selling metal, he was selling trust. He realized early on that information was the true currency of power. He cultivated a relationship with Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse, a man with a massive fortune built on the blood of mercenary soldiers. Meer became his trusted court factor, managing his wealth when the prince had to flee from Napoleon's advancing armies. Meer didn't just save the prince's money, he multiplied it. But his greatest masterstroke wasn't a financial deal. It was his 5 sons, Amshell, Solomon, Nathan, Carl, and James. On his deathbed, Meer gave them a command that would change history. Stay united, work together, never let an outsider into the business. He sent them to the 5 major financial capitals of Europe: Frankfurt, Vienna, London, Naples, and Paris. Like a 5-fingered hand, they began to grip the throat of European finance. But it was the 3rd son, Nathan, sent to London, who would pull off the greatest heist in human history. June 18th, 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. The fate of Europe hung in the balance. If Napoleon won, the British Empire would crumble. If Wellington won, Britain would become the supreme global power. In London, the stock market was paralyzed with fear. Everyone was waiting for news. But Nathan Rothschild didn't wait. He had built the most sophisticated private intelligence network in the world. A system of fast boats and carrier pigeons that was faster than the official government couriers. Nathan's agents were at the battlefield. As soon as they saw Napoleon's lines break, they raced to the coast. Nathan received the news of Wellington's victory a full 24 hours before the British government. Now, imagine you are Nathan. You have the most valuable information on earth. What do? Nathan walked onto the floor of the London Stock Exchange. He didn't buy, he began to sell. He sold everything. The room panicked. Rothschild is selling. Wellington must have lost. Napoleon is coming. The market crashed. Consols, the British government bonds, plummeted to pennies on the dollar. At the very last moment, When the panic was at its peak, Nathan gave a silent signal to his agents. They began to buy. They bought everything. Hours later, the official news arrived. Wellington had won. The market skyrocketed. In a single day, Nathan Rothschild had not just made a fortune, he had effectively bought the British economy. He now owned the debt of the world's most powerful nation. From that day on, the Rothschilds didn't just fund governments, they controlled them. While the Rothschilds were consolidating power in Europe, a new frontier was emerging: America. The story often told is that the Rothschilds were defeated by the American spirit. But the reality is far more nuanced. They knew that a growing superpower needed a central bank. They were the primary backers of the first and second banks of the United States. When Andrew Jackson famously killed the bank, he thought he had won. But the Rothschilds simply waited. They knew that the cycle of debt was inevitable. By 1913, with the creation of the Federal Reserve, the Rothschild model of central banking finally took root in American soil. While their name wasn't on the charter, their influence was felt through their proxies and partners on Wall Street. They realized that in America, power didn't need to be royal. It just needed to be corporate. They funded the railroads, the steel mills, and the oil giants. They were the silent architects of the American century. But it wasn't all just ledgers and loans. The Rothschilds became the ultimate symbols of European aristocracy. They built chateaux that rivaled Versailles. They collected art that would eventually fill the world's greatest museums. They produced wines like Chateau Lafite that became the standard of excellence for the global elite. This was the Rothschild Style. It was a display of wealth so overwhelming that it served as a psychological barrier. It told the world, we are not just rich, we are permanent. They married within the family to keep the fortune concentrated. Out of 58 marriages in the family's early history, nearly half were between first cousins. It was a golden cage, designed to ensure that not a single penny of Meer Amshell's legacy ever leaked out to an outsider. As the 19th century progressed, the Rothschild Empire became the banker to kings. They funded the Suez Canal, the unification of Germany, and the expansion of the British Empire into Africa and India. But their true power lay in the central bank model. They realized that if you control the money supply of a nation, it doesn't matter who makes the laws. They pioneered the system of national debt. Governments would borrow from the Rothschilds to fund wars. When the war ended, the government would tax its citizens to pay back the interest. The Rothschilds won if there was war, and they won if there was peace. They were so powerful that they could stop wars simply by refusing to lend money. They were the unofficial sixth power of Europe, but with this power came a deep, dark obsession with secrecy. They never published their accounts. They never allowed their wealth to be audited. Even their wills were written in a way that kept the true extent of their fortune hidden from the public eye. By the early 1900s, it was estimated that the Rothschilds controlled half the world's wealth. But then, the world began to change. 2 world wars, the rise of the United States, and the birth of the modern financial system. The name Rothschild began to fade from the headlines. They were no longer the richest on the Forbes list. They were replaced by Rockefellers, then Gates, then Musk. This brings us back to our opening question. Why have they spent the last 50 years trying to convince us they no longer exist as a global power? The answer is as brilliant as it is terrifying. In the old world, power was visible. It was gold bars in a vault and names on a building. But in the modern world, visible power is a target. Tax authorities, revolutionaries, and public scrutiny are the enemies of old wealth. The Rothschilds didn't lose their money. They diversified it. They moved it into thousands of trusts, shell companies, and foundations. They shifted from being the owners to being the advisors. Today, the Rothschild Group is involved in almost every major corporate merger and government privatization on the planet. They are the advisors to the world's most powerful corporations and the most influential politicians. They realized that the ultimate power isn't having your name on the door. It's being the one who decides who gets to walk through it. They don't want to be on the Forbes list because the Forbes list is for the new rich, the ones who still need to prove they have money. The Rothschilds have moved beyond money. They have moved into the realm of pure influence. The shadow hasn't disappeared. It has simply become the atmosphere we breathe. When you look at the global banking system, when you see the cycles of debt that keep nations enslaved, you are looking at the architecture Meer Amshell designed in a Frankfurt ghetto 250 years ago. The richest family in history didn't go away. They just became invisible. And that, perhaps, is their greatest masterstroke of all. Thank you for watching The Empire of Shadow. If this story opened your eyes, share it, because the only thing the shadow fears is the light.